Before we begin, this story involves descriptions of violence, including axe attacks and murder. If that's something you need to step away from, we understand. Take care of yourself first. On the night of March 19, 1919, every dance hall in New Orleans was full. Jazz poured from open windows in the French Quarter, in the Garden District, in shotgun houses from Treme to the Irish Channel. Hundreds of amateur bands played in living rooms. A composer named Joseph Davila had written a new song for the occasion, the mysterious Axeman's Jazz. The entire city was playing music because a serial killer told them to. And it worked. Nobody died that night. Every story in here actually happened. That's the part that should scare you. This is the Unlit Room. New stories every week. Tonight, a killer who never brought a weapon, a letter from hell, and the night an entire city answered a murderer with music. New Orleans, 1918. The corner of Upper Line and Magnolia Streets, a working-class Italian immigrant neighborhood where grocers lived above their shops. Joseph Maggio, 63, ran the corner store with his wife Catherine. Their apartment shared a wall with Joseph's brother Andrew, who slept next door. In the early hours of May 23, 1918, someone removed a panel from the Maggio's back door using a chisel. Not kicked in, not broken. Chiseled out, quietly, surgically, the wood cut away just enough for a hand to reach the lock. Inside, the intruder found a straight razor. It belonged to Andrew Maggio, Joseph's brother. The killer picked it up and walked to the bedroom. Joseph and Catherine Maggio were attacked in their bed. Their throats were cut with the razor, then both were struck with an axe, their own axe, taken from the property. Jake and Andrew Maggio found Joseph still breathing when they rushed in. He died before help arrived. Catherine was nearly decapitated. Here's what the killer didn't do. He didn't take money. Valuables were sitting in plain sight, untouched. He left the chisel on the floor. He left the razor on the neighbor's lawn. He left bloody clothes behind. He had changed into clean garments before walking out into the pre-dawn dark. Who breaks into a home with nothing but a chisel, uses the victim's own weapons, and leaves without stealing a thing? New Orleans in 1918 was a city still shaking off the last century. Jazz was barely a decade old. The war in Europe was winding down, and in the Italian neighborhoods of the lower wards, corner groceries were the heartbeat of community life. Part shop, part social hub, part family home. 5 weeks later, June 27th, Louis Bissouma and Harriet Lowe were attacked in their apartment at the corner of Dorjou Noir, and La Harpe Streets. Same method, a door panel chiseled out, the victim's own axe used against them. Lowe's face was permanently paralyzed from the blow. Then August 5th. Anna Schneider, 28 years old and 8 months pregnant, woke to a dark figure standing over her bed. She was bashed in the face. She survived. 2 days later, she gave birth. The pattern was unmistakable. Italian grocers. Pre-dawn hours. A chiseled door panel. The victim's own axe. Nothing stolen. The newspapers called him the Axeman. But there was something the press was slower to notice. In every attack where both a man and a woman were present, the woman sustained far worse injuries. Catherine Maggio, nearly decapitated. Harriet Lowe, face destroyed. Anna Schneider, beaten while 8 months pregnant. The men were killed or hurt, yes. But the violence reserved for the women was different. It was focused. Not everyone who studied these attacks saw a madman. Some saw something more deliberate and more disturbing, but that theory would take decades to surface. At the time, the police had a simpler theory. The Italian victim profile suggested mafia intimidation. Black hand extortion was common in immigrant communities. But there was no financial motive, no demands, no follow-up. Just violence, then silence. Not everyone agrees on what the Axeman was. The contemporary police and press focused on ethnicity. The majority of victims were Italian immigrants, most of them grocers. To investigators in 1918, that pointed toward organized crime, the mafia or the Black Hand running an extortion campaign through terror. The Italian victim profile fit, the targeted occupation fit. But there's a problem with that theory. Extortion requires a demand. The Axeman never demanded anything. No money, no territory, no compliance. He didn't leave notes, he didn't return. And the attacks followed a ritual pattern. The chisel, the victim's own weapon, the refusal to steal, that looks nothing like organized crime and everything like compulsion. Decades later, criminologists Colin and Damon Wilson proposed a different reading entirely. They argued the Axeman specifically targeted women and killed men only when they blocked access to the female victim. The evidence is there in the injury patterns. Women received catastrophically worse violence in every mixed-gender attack. Catherine Maggio nearly decapitated. Harriet Lowe permanently disfigured. Anna Schneider's face destroyed while she was 8 months pregnant. If the Wilsons are right, then the Italian grocer pattern wasn't about ethnicity at all. It was about access. These women lived in homes where the door was easy to breach and the layout was predictable. Both theories account for the evidence. Neither has been proven, and the Axeman never gave anyone the chance to ask. Then the letter arrived. On March 13, 1919, the New Orleans Times-Picayune published a letter. It was written in florid, theatrical prose, the kind of language that sounds like it was composed for an audience, not a confession. The author claimed to be from hell. He referenced His Satanic Majesty. He called himself the Axeman, and he made a proposition. On Tuesday, March 19th, at 12:15 a.m., he would pass through the city. Every home where a jazz band was in full swing would be spared. Everyone else, and this was the specific threat, would get the axe. The city had 6 days to decide. They chose jazz. On the night of March 19th, every dance hall in New Orleans was packed to capacity. Hundreds of homes had amateur bands playing in their parlors. Joseph de Villa's The Mysterious Axeman's Jazz, written specifically for the occasion, was the most requested song in the city. People who didn't own instruments banged pots. Families who couldn't play a note hired musicians. An entire city, unified by terror, responded not with barricades, but with music. And the Axeman kept his word. Not a single person was attacked that night. The music stopped, and then, eventually, so did the Axeman. The attacks continued sporadically through 1919. The last known assault came on October 27th, and then nothing. No arrest, no deathbed confession, no forensic breakthrough. The Axeman simply stopped. Over 100 years of investigation, speculation, and revisitation, and not a single suspect has ever been confirmed. The chiseled door panels, the victim's own weapons, the theatrical letter, the jazz night, all of it remains unexplained. Every theory collapses under the weight of what we don't know. If it was the mafia, why the ritual? If it was a sexual predator, why the letter? If it was a demon, well, demons don't usually stop. The Axeman of New Orleans vanished as completely as if the story he told about himself were true. There's something unsettling about a city choosing collective joy over collective fear, and having it work. On March 19, 1919, 1 million people danced to a murderer's command. And maybe that's the detail that should bother us most. Not that a killer demanded music, but that the music was the only thing that worked. Some monsters don't get caught. They just stop. And the silence they leave behind is its own kind of haunting. The Maggio family, Catherine, Anna Schneider, Harriet Lowe, the people whose names we know and the ones we don't, they deserved answers. 100 years later, the room is still dark. More stories like this every week. Subscribe if you want the next one to find you. Follow the Unlit Room wherever you listen. Tell a friend who can't sleep. Subscribers hear this one ad-free. Follow the Unlit Room for the next story. Full story on the main channel. Follow if you're wide awake. That was the Unlit Room. See you in the dark.